Let me ask you something. Think about the last time you spent money you didn't really plan to spend. Not on a bill. Not on something you needed. I mean the spontaneous stuff. The dinner out when you weren't really hungry. The round of drinks you bought because everyone else was buying rounds. The trip you said yes to because the group chat was going and you didn't want to be the one who didn't go. The concert tickets. The birthday dinner at the restaurant that was $30 more per person than you would ever choose on your own. Now here's the question I want you to sit with. Would you have spent that money if you'd been alone? In most cases, the honest answer is no. You wouldn't have. And that gap between what you spend with people and what you spend without them, that gap has a name. And it is quietly one of the most significant financial forces in your life. Not the stock market, not your salary, not inflation, your friends. My name is John, and I spend way too much time thinking about the social forces that quietly shape our financial decisions in ways we almost never examine honestly. If you're someone who feels like you're doing okay individually, but somehow always seems to spend more than you intended when you're around your social circle, make sure to hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Because today we're going deep on something that personal finance almost never addresses directly. The financial cost of your social life. Not in a cut off your friends and live alone eating rice kind of way, but in a real, honest, behavioral economics kind of way that might fundamentally change how you think about your money and your relationships at the same time. Let's get into it. Section 1. The social spending premium. What it actually costs. Here's the thing. Nobody talks about this honestly because it touches something deeply personal. Your friendships. Your belonging. Your identity within a social group. And those things are real and they matter. But here's what most people don't realize. The discomfort talking about it doesn't make it less real. It just makes it more expensive. Let's put some numbers on it. Because I think this is where the conversation gets genuinely uncomfortable in a useful way. According to a 2023 survey by LendingTree, the average American spends approximately $3,000 per year on what the survey called friendship spending. Money spent specifically to maintain social relationships. Dinners, events, group trips, rounds of drinks, birthday presents for people you barely know anymore. $3,000 a year. That's $250 a month. That's a car payment for some people. But here's where it gets really interesting. When the same survey asked respondents whether they felt financially pressured by their social lives, 36% said yes. More than 1 in 3 people openly acknowledged feeling financially pressured by their own friend group. And yet almost none of them had talked about it directly with the people pressuring them. Because how do you bring that up? How do you tell your friends that their lifestyle is straining your finances without it becoming a whole thing? That's the trap. The pressure is real. The cost is real. The silence is real. And the combination of all three is what makes this so financially destructive. Now let me be precise about what I mean when I say your friends are keeping you broke. I am not saying your friends are bad people. I am not saying they're doing this maliciously. Most of the time, the financial pressure your social circle creates is completely unconscious, on their part and on yours. But unconscious doesn't mean harmless. And understanding the specific mechanisms at work is the first step toward changing the outcome. Section 2. The 3 mechanisms. How it actually happens. There are 3 primary ways that social relationships create financial drag. And I want to go through all 3 carefully because each one operates differently and requires a different response. Mechanism 1. Social proof spending. This is the most straightforward one, and it's the one most people are vaguely aware of. When the people around you are spending at a certain level, that level starts to feel normal, not chosen. Normal. The $80 dinner becomes a default dinner. The weekend trip becomes what weekends look like. The bottle service becomes what celebrating looks like. You're not making an active choice to spend at that level. You're simply matching the environment you're in. Psychologist Robert Cialdini, who literally wrote the book on influence, identified social proof as one of the most powerful behavioral drivers humans experience. We look to others to determine appropriate behavior in ambiguous situations. And spending, especially social spending, is almost always an ambiguous situation. Is this restaurant expensive? Compared to what? Is this trip a lot of money? Depends who you're asking. Your reference point shapes your judgment. and your reference point is almost entirely determined by your social group. Here's the math on what this costs. If your social group's normal dinner out runs $65 per person, and yours would naturally run $35, that's a $30 premium per outing. If you go out with friends twice a week, not an unusual frequency, that's $60 per week, $240 per month, $2,880 per year in social proof premium alone, just from dinners. Mechanism 2, the fear of social exclusion. This one is more painful to examine because it goes deeper. Humans are social animals. Full stop. The fear of being excluded from a group is neurologically processed in the same region of the brain as physical pain. This is documented research from Naomi Eisenberger at UCLA. Being left out of the group genuinely hurts at a neurological level in a way that is functionally similar to a physical injury, which means when you say no to the group trip, when you decline the expensive dinner, when you're the person who can't come, your brain is registering a genuine threat signal. And the way most people respond to that threat signal is to spend the money, not because they rationally decided the experience is worth the cost, but because the alternative, the exclusion, the missing out, the being the odd one out, triggers a pain response that spending immediately relieves. This mechanism is particularly powerful in groups where spending is a form of participation. Groups where you have to show up to the expensive thing to be part of the experience. Where not spending means not belonging. And it is shockingly common, especially in your 20s and 30s when social belonging feels high stakes. Mechanism 3, identity-linked spending. This is the most subtle and the most powerful of the three. Over time, spending patterns within a social group become part of the group's identity. How you eat together, where you go on trips, what you do on weekends. These rituals become the fabric of the friendship, and therefore, spending money on them starts to feel not just socially expected, but personally meaningful. When you skip the group tradition, whatever it is, you're not just saving money. You feel like you're opting out of who this group is, who you are inside this group. And that identity threat is often more powerful than a financial threat, which is why people will consistently choose social belonging over financial health, often without even realizing they've made a trade. A 2022 study published in the Journal of Consumer Research found that people's spending choices in social contexts were more strongly predicted by their social identity than by their actual financial situation. People didn't spend based on what they could afford. They spent based on who they believed themselves to be within their social group. The financial reality was almost irrelevant to the decision. Section 3. The friend group spectrum. Not all social costs are equal. Now you might be thinking, okay, John, but not all friend groups are the same. And you're absolutely right. This is not a universal indictment of friendship. Social relationships exist on a spectrum when it comes to their financial impact. And I think it's genuinely useful to think about where your specific relationships fall. On one end of the spectrum, you have what I call financially aligned friendships, relationships where your spending values are naturally compatible, where nobody feels pressure to spend above their means, where let's do something low-key is a completely normal and accepted suggestion, where the friendship is about the people, not the price tag of the activity. These friendships are financially neutral or even positive. They might actually introduce you to cheaper, more creative ways to spend time. On the other end, you have financially misaligned friendships, relationships where there is a persistent, structural gap between what you naturally spend and what the group spends, where the group's lifestyle runs significantly above your budget, where suggesting a cheaper alternative feels socially risky, where the price of membership in this friendship is a consistently elevated spend rate. And here's the important thing. Financially misaligned friendships are not bad friendships. The people might be wonderful. The connection might be genuine. But the financial structure, how you spend time together, is creating a recurring drain that, if you're honest, you probably already know is there. The question isn't whether to have those friendships. It's whether to be honest with yourself about what they actually cost, and whether you've actively chosen to pay that cost, or whether it's just happening to you by default. Section 4. The math of keeping up what it's really worth. Look, let me put the hardest version of this question directly. If your social circle's lifestyle is costing you an extra $300 per month above what you would naturally spend, And that's a conservative estimate for a lot of people. Here's what that $300 represents in real terms. $300 per month, invested consistently in a simple index fund from age 25, at historical average market returns of 8% annually, becomes approximately $1.05 million by age 65. $1 million from the money you spend keeping up with people who, statistically, are probably also keeping up with someone else. Now, let me be clear. I am not saying you should never spend money socially. That would be a miserable, isolated life and a false trade. But I am saying that if you have never consciously examined the premium your social life charges you, you are making $1 million decision by default. And decisions made by default are almost never the decisions you would make if you were thinking clearly. Here's what most people don't realize. The people in your social circle who seem the most financially comfortable, a lot of them are carrying debt to maintain the appearance. According to a 2023 report from Bankrate, 36% of Americans who carry credit card debt cite social spending, dining out, entertainment, travel with friends, as a significant contributor to that debt. The lifestyle you're straining your budget to keep up with is, in many cases, also a performance. It is debt wearing the costume of a life. Section 5. The honest conversation. What actually changes things? All right, so what do you actually do? Because this video is useless if it just leaves you feeling vaguely guilty about liking your friends. Let me give you something practical. The first thing is a personal audit. Before you change a single behavior, get honest about the actual numbers. Go back through your last 3 months of bank and credit card statements. Identify every expense that was socially driven. Dinner out with friends, group events, travel, rounds of drinks, social gifts. Add them up. Don't judge them yet. Just see the number. Most people have never done this, and the number is usually significantly larger than their internal estimate. Then ask yourself honestly, of these expenses, which ones genuinely brought me real joy and connection? Which ones did I spend because I felt I had to? That distinction is where your financial recovery lives. The second thing is reframing the I can't afford it conversation. One of the most paralyzing things about social financial pressure is the shame around saying no. People would rather go into debt than admit to their friends that something is outside their budget. And I understand that financial vulnerability is genuinely uncomfortable. But here's a reframe that changes the dynamic completely. Instead of I can't afford it, which sounds like a limitation, a failure, a lack, try that doesn't fit my financial goals right now. Those two statements describe the same financial reality, but one sounds like defeat, and one sounds like a decision. One triggers sympathy or pity, the other triggers respect. The language you use shapes how others respond and how you feel about yourself. And here's something that might surprise you. Research from the American Psychological Association found that people who openly communicate their financial boundaries in social situations report significantly higher relationship satisfaction than those who silently comply and privately resent. The conversation you're most afraid of is probably the one that actually strengthens a friendship. The third thing is engineering lower-cost social rituals. Most friendships are built around habits, not price points. The expensive dinner is a habit. The pricey bar is a habit. The group trip to the expensive destination is a habit. Habits are changeable, but someone has to suggest a change. Be the person who suggests the alternative. The home dinner instead of the restaurant. The local hike instead of the weekend trip. The backyard hangout instead of the bar. You will be surprised how many people in your friend group are quietly relieved when someone makes a lower cost option feel normal and socially acceptable, because they were probably feeling the pressure too. The fourth thing is the most important and the hardest. You may need to genuinely reassess some relationships. Not dramatically, not with confrontation, but honestly. If there are friendships in your life that are structurally, persistently, unavoidably expensive, where the only way to maintain the relationship is to spend at a level that is genuinely damaging your financial future, then that friendship is not free. It has a price. And you need to decide whether that price is one you're choosing to pay or one that's just happening to you. Real friends do not require you to be financially self-destructive to be part of their lives. Real connection does not need a cover charge. If the friendship can only exist in expensive restaurants and premium experiences, then what you have is not a friendship. It's a shared consumption habit with familiar faces. Section 6. Building a financially honest social life. Here's the positive version of everything I've said today, because I want to leave you with something that feels constructive rather than just critical. The research on this is actually really encouraging. A landmark Harvard study on happiness and relationships, one of the longest-running studies of adult life ever conducted, found that the quality of our relationships is the single strongest predictor of long-term well-being. Not wealth, not career success. Relationships. But quality is not the same as price. The study didn't find that expensive shared experiences predicted relationship quality. It found that genuine connection, mutual support, and honest communication did, which means the most financially sustainable version of your social life is also, according to the best research available, the most emotionally fulfilling version. Lower cost activities done with people you genuinely like beat expensive activities done with people you're performing for. Every time. The camping trip beats the luxury hotel if the people are right. The home-cooked meal beats the restaurant if the conversation is real. The free walk through the neighborhood beats the ticketed event if the connection is honest. Building this version of your social life starts with one thing: honesty. Honesty with yourself about what your social life is actually costing you. Honesty with your friends about what you can genuinely afford. And honesty about which relationships are built on genuine connection versus shared financial performance. The friends worth keeping will stay. The ones who only show up for the expensive version of you were never really there for you anyway. Closing, motivation, and call to action. Look, I want to acknowledge something before we close. This video is uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable because money and friendship are both deeply personal, and putting them in the same conversation creates a tension that most people would rather avoid. But avoidance is expensive, and the discomfort of this conversation is far cheaper than the alternative, which is spending the next 10, 20, 30 years quietly funding a lifestyle that doesn't reflect your actual values or your actual financial goals. You get to choose what your social life looks like. You get to choose which relationships you invest in, financially and emotionally. You get to decide what connection means to you and what you're willing to spend to have it. But those choices need to be actual choices, made consciously, with clear eyes, with real numbers in front of you, not defaults, not social autopilot, not spending money you don't have to impress people who aren't paying your bills. Your financial future is built one decision at a time. And some of the most important decisions you will ever make about money will happen not in front of a spreadsheet or a brokerage account, but across a dinner table, in a group chat, at a bar on a Friday night, when someone suggests something, and the easy thing is to just say yes. You are allowed to say something else. If this gave you something real to think about today, hit the like button. It helps more people find this content and have a conversation that most people are avoiding. Subscribe if you haven't already, because every week we're going deep on the psychology and the math of money in ways that actually matter. And if you want to take the next step, I've got a video specifically on how to build a financial system that works automatically, so that even when your social life gets expensive, your savings are already protected. It's linked right up here.